Okay, good morning, folks. How are we doing? It's good morning for me anyway. It's probably evening for most of you guys. I've got the papaya here. I've already cracked on with it. I couldn't wait. I should have shown you the nice, fresh new one, so it's a bit mangled. But as predicted, yeah, the fruit here in Thailand is pretty incredible so far. And it's really cheap as well. I mean, this whole papaya was about 40 baht, which is slightly less than £1 sterling. It's like 85p or something like that for a whole delicious papaya. I mean, this would be, and it wouldn't even be as good, but in the UK, the equivalent would be, it'd be £4. Yeah, it'd be £4. It'd be, yeah, whatever, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, almost 10 times the price. Perhaps. No, not 10 times, but certainly 5, 6 times the price. So, should we do a little taste test? By the way, I know the lighting is awful, but who cares? Like, I'm doing this impromptu. It's 8 a.m. in the morning. I've just finished a coaching call. I'm going to the gym in a second. So I want to film this. This is really bugging me. I want to rant about this to you guys. I know you'll get some use out of it. So I know the lighting's not great, but who cares? It's about the quality of message, right? Or so that's how I rationalize it. That's so good. You know what? I shouldn't have done this because now I just want to eat the whole thing. And I've got to, as I say, rant to you guys. So this will be the last nibble, and then we'll get on with this. So good. And obviously there is expensive food here as well. There is expensive fruit. So yesterday I also paid like £7 for 2 mangoes, but they're unreal. There are much cheaper mango. There's much cheaper species of mango here, but these ones are unreal. I love them. So, you know, it depends what you spend, but you know, certainly the conception that this part of the world is very cheap, I found generally to be extremely true. It depends on your tastes, but generally I found that to be very true. Anyway, what I want to talk to you about today is something that will absolutely destroy your weight loss efforts. And it doesn't apply to weight loss, but like muscle gain or fitness efforts. I suppose you could extend this to other domains of your life. And it's this, and it's something I know we're all guilty of doing. I've absolutely done it in the past. And it's a kind of a human thing. So I say guilty there, kind of maybe that's over the top to use that word, because I think we've all done this. I think this is so common to the extent that we shouldn't feel that guilty about it. It's clearly something inherent in human nature that makes us do this. But to cut to the chase, the whole enchilada, excuse me, chopping and bloody changing. Like every day doing, or every week doing something different with your diet and your exercise, to the extent that you're never actually testing what works, because you're just in this constant state of sort of like diet paranoia and overwhelm. And one guru said this online, and another the next day said this. I just don't know what to do. Low carb, high fat, low fat, protein. What do I do about that? Plant-based, keto. And obviously I speak to my niche, and that's the vegans, vegetarians, and the plant-based dieters. Like, that's my thing. That's the slim and sustain. That's the Fit with Ryan Adams, like, brand, let's say. That's who I attract. But this goes across the diet spectrum, right? People are so desperate for results, especially fast results, there's many reasons why people constantly change their opinions on what to do. But I think one of them is that impatience, like the desperation for fast results. It gets you in this kind of frenetic, we've all been there, this frenzied state where like you literally read one thing or hear one thing on the internet and you're willing to just freaking upheave your entire diet overnight and just do something else because you're just so desperate for a massive breakthrough and to lose that weight fast and to see some results in the coming week or so. So impatience will do that to you, but desperation to lose weight will also do that to you. You need to think about what you can actually sustain, what will actually work for you for the long term. Well, what will actually sort of allow you to transition from diet to quote unquote lifestyle quite easily. And a lot of these extreme strategies, like, yeah, you're going to eat green salads every day. You're going to do keto and avoid carbs the rest of your life. I mean, that's absurd. So, you know, there has to be this filtering, this question I recommend, like, you guys ask yourself, like, the way I'm eating right now, could I do this forever? And let me be clear on this, like, a weight loss diet doesn't look the same as a weight maintenance diet. But I still think you need to ask this question, like, would I, generally speaking, eat with this particular philosophy forever? There might be more calories in the future. I won't need to be as strict in the future. There might be more deviations. But generally, like, my overall diet right now, do I love this? And I can honestly say that's how I feel about my diet, right? Like I absolutely love it. I love eating this way. It's not hard anymore. And I have my moments and I have cravings and I have moments of imperfection and I have moments where I do briefly go off the rails, but like that's few and far between versus years ago because of many things like improvement in relationship with food, improvement with habits. But largely because I actually just love my diet now and I've got so used to it. And it's the default setting, which is what I spoke about on my stream here a couple of days ago, right? Like you get so used to eating this way that it feels weird when you don't eat this way. Whereas when you're trying to eat healthily for the first time, it feels weird and foreign to you to eat healthily and to not have the junk food and not have those big sort of jumps in dopamine and the skyrocketing of blood sugar, etc., etc. But now for me, like it's papaya, man, like rice and beans, like the tofu salad that I made last night, the stir fry that I put on my Instagram story the other day, like the healthy stir fry. Like I love this. I love that. I enjoy these meals and I enjoy this process and I enjoy waking up in the morning and feeling trim and feeling good. And it's vain, but looking at myself and going, hey, Ryan, you look pretty good today. The abs are popping through. Like you look really good. And it's not that one bad meal will totally ruin that, but a series of bad meals will absolutely start to get in the way of that. And so I just love how I eat now. And that really helps. But this constant chopping and changing that people do is absolutely a fast track to stay in the diet weight loss roundabout forever, for decades and decades and decades. And I can't tell you how many clients come to me and say, Ryan, I've been doing this for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Some of them have been dieting on and off since longer than I've been alive, and they've hired me as their coach. There's a great irony in that, right? But that will destroy you. Like, the constant diet hopping, the frenetic action, the ease at which you get overwhelmed. The internet doesn't help with this. So I'm not blaming people entirely for this, but the internet doesn't help. It's information overload, right? And sometimes it's not chopping and changing that's the problem. It's the prospect of chopping and changing. That just shuts you down altogether. That just gets overwhelming. But chopping and changing is a problem in itself, because if you're doing keto 1 week and then plant-based the next and then juicing the next and then you start intermittent fasting the next, bluntly put, how the bloody hell do you know what actually works? Like, you've got no idea. So you've got none of that feedback loop that actually informs you to keep doing what you're doing or to actually make tweaks and changes, because you have no baseline. You have no measurable sort of fundamental plan that you're following. That's not to say you need to eat exactly the same meals to exactly the same ingredients every single day for the purpose of testing. You don't need to be quite that neurotic about it, but having some overall game plan and some structure to how you're eating. So you can actually look at the scales at the end of every week. You can actually assess your physique at the end of every week and go, hey, is this working or not? And if not, why not? And what do I need to change? Or no, this is working, so I just keep doing what I'm doing. But people don't do this, right? Because of, like I said earlier, impatience and desperation and the internet and bluntly put, their lack of nutrition knowledge, to the extent that when they hear one, or exercise knowledge, so when they hear one argument, it's enough to totally upheave their whole view on like what a healthy diet looks like. Or they're very impressionable. I don't want to sound condescending towards people. I've been there too. But the longer you do this and the more you advance your nutrition knowledge, by consuming content online and reading books. Like, if you just get into this world, you don't even have to be religious about this. If you get into this world of online content, like you are clearly watching me, like you've sought me out, and I certainly won't be the only person you're following, your nutrition knowledge naturally improves. You don't really need to be an intentional nerd about it. Your nutrition knowledge does naturally improve. And so those months and years of experience where you're learning more and more steadily over time, quite naturally, about nutrition without even having to force it, that allows you to sort of dismiss bad ideas very easily. The point I'm trying to make here is, like, when you're a bit of a noob, like, it's kind of hard. Like, you are very impressionable and you literally will go from keto to paleo or vice versa or whatever, like that, because one argument is enough, or one YouTube video, one Instagram post isn't from the right person is enough to sway you. But that chopping and changing, like, you might even be getting results, but like, how do you know what from? And even in the plant-based niche, like, there's so much bickering and infighting. It's like, what do we do about the fats? And so said this about fat, and then the other person gossiped about them on YouTube. So-and-so says, and it's just nutritarian, starch solution. Like, and obviously everyone's got their own spin on things, but the general agreement in this community is like, whole plant foods, like obviously like fiber-led whole plant foods. And, the whole slim and sustain approach, that's come about as a result of slim and sustain is not something I sort of cultivated and reverse engineered with too much intentionality. Slim and sustain is just my life. Like, I believed in wanting to lose weight, trying to find a way to lose weight without having to cut my carbohydrate content, because that was the message years and years ago. It's like, it's always the carbs. Now I think people are starting to see through this, but it was always the carbs that were the problem. So I wanted a way to lose weight while still eating lots of carbohydrates. Like whole foods, plant-based diet, tick that box for me. I wanted to lose weight feeling full and satisfied, having lots of fiber and lots of bulk and lots of volume, as many plant foods do, check that box. I wanted to lose weight without having, I love exercise, but I didn't want to have, this is the distinction, I didn't want to have to do loads of exercise because I was trying to burn off calories from like loads of junk foods. So to find a nutrition approach that really was so powerful that I didn't have to do that much exercise, and any exercise I did do was kind of this little cherry on the cake, little sprinkling, little garnish. I love that. That was so for me. Yeah, I wanted an approach that was not fast and not speedy anymore, and the weight loss was still thorough, but it actually felt like I could stick to this because I was so full, because I did feel so nourished, because I did feel so satisfied, because it was so simple for me to follow, because it deeply resonated with me. The ethical argument to veganism as well, obviously. And so, like, I loved this. I found all those things. It wasn't easy. It didn't come overnight, but that is the slim and sustain system, right? It's a whole foods plant-based diet with a couple of little Ryan Adams tweaks. And that's what you guys resonate with. That's what my clients resonate with. That's why they come to me, because they like my version of a plant-based diet. But the slim and sustain approach and nutritarian and Dr. Greger approach, not that I'm putting my name up in lights with the esteemed aforementioned, but they all agree on far more than they disagree on. There's a lot I look at, like Furman is a good example with, and disagree on. I disagree with his stance on potatoes. I have argued many, many times that a lot of the folks following nutritarian are severely under-eating because they're so micronutrient focused. Other criticisms as well, I could go on. But when I look at what he advises overall versus what I advise overall, it's like 98%, I'm like, yeah, I love this guy's stuff. Like, I really respect this guy's stuff. Like, this guy thinks like I do about nutrition, generally speaking. And so I think what I'm coming to here is just pick one approach, guys. Trust a process. So cliche, trust the process. Actually, let's reword it. Like I said earlier, trust a process. Actually stick to it so you can test it, so you can figure out what works. And then you can dismiss it. Like, if it doesn't work out for you, then you can dismiss it. And of course, there are all these templates out there for us that we could follow. And I would always argue some templates are better than others. But I still think there's merit to like personal anecdote and personal testing with nutrition and exercise. Like, what actually works for me? Okay, so-and-so online is saying X, Y, and Z, but I need to figure out what actually produces results for me. And what is something I could actually consistently stick to, rather than this just frenetic energy chopping and changing. You need to trust a process. Whether it's mine or not, like, I'm not authoritarian about this. I'm not a cult leader. Like, I can respect that maybe you come to this channel for some tips and some advice, but there's some stuff you listen to and you're like, I don't really resonate with that, Ryan, or I heard a counter argument that I agree with more on that, Ryan. Like even my clients, I don't expect them. Like, I want them to follow my instructions and I want them to believe in me. And they immensely do. They're like incredibly compliant. Sounds awful, doesn't it? But they're incredibly compliant people, incredibly compliant clients, because they respect me and they trust me. That's why they come to me, right? And I don't forget that. I'm grateful for that. But I've also earned that, right? But at the same time, like, if they've heard arguments elsewhere, or there's a sport, an activity that they like, let's say rebounding. This is topical. I criticized some of the arguments around rebounding very recently. Not to open this can of worms, but just quickly for the record, I think rebounding is incredible. But some of the claims about rebounding for muscle growth in particular, I thought were absolutely absurd that I've been hearing online. And so when I have clients turn around to me and say, hey, Ryan, I've been thinking about kind of starting rebounding again. I heard that it's really good for muscle growth. I'm kind of like, look, rebounding is good. It's not good for muscle growth. Like, there's way better stuff that we're already doing for muscle growth. So forget rebounding from that perspective. It has all these other benefits, and I'll support you if you want to do it, and we'll build it into your plan. We'll agree on it like democratically. But let's not be under any presumption that you're going to be jacked from doing a bit of rebounding, right? It doesn't anywhere near often, the muscle fatigue and the time under tension, and the ability for progressive overload, like conventional strength and resistance training does. But anyway, I said let's not open this can of worms. Here he goes, foot in mouth. I can't help myself, can I? But you catch my drift here, right? My clients trust me, but I don't expect them to agree with everything. Hopefully you guys trust me over time when you've come back enough and see that hopefully I'm a legit person that walks the talk. But I don't expect you to agree with everything. So you do need to find your kinks, and you do need to find what works for you. And there is value in personal anecdote. But for goodness sakes, don't be chopping and changing so much that you can't actually test what works. Pick a process, follow that. If you deeply resonate with me, fantastic. Subscribe to my channel. Read my free 48 Laws of Weight Loss Manifesto. I'll stick that link down below. Join the program if you want that extra help and support and accountability from me to actually guarantee that you get results this time. Like, you're in the right place. But if you don't fully align with my stuff, fine, but please take heed of my message today, which is you still need to pick a process instead of this frenetic chopping and changing that ultimately leaves you to getting overwhelmed anyway and then not taking any action. So you have the phase of like, oh, I'm hearing different arguments all the time, so I'll introduce this to my diet or I'll take away this from my diet, and then you never know what's working or not. And then stage two is you've done that so many times and you've heard so many conflicting opinions that you just give up because it's just like, oh my goodness, like it's easier to just not take action here. And overwhelm freezes people in this regard and they procrastinate. And then you never try anything, never get any results. So you have to pick a process and test that. And it takes at least a week with several measurements, not just Monday to Sunday on the scale, but several weight measurements to actually inform you of whether your strategy is working or not. Do it fairly. Do it first thing in the morning. Have continuity, with how you weigh yourself. Don't weigh yourself at 6 a.m. one day and then 9 p.m. the other after you've had a bunch of food and water, right? Do it in the morning time, right? Do it ideally, it sounds maybe over the top, but naked, before food, before water, after a bowel movement preferably. You might not always have huge control over that, of course. But have continuity with how you're weighing yourself so you can actually trust the data. Do multiple weigh-ins. Make sure you're not kind of judging your progress too heavily in PMS ladies, for example, when you're obviously going to be retaining a decent amount of water. Or if you've had loads of sodium, you've eaten cleanly, but you've had loads of soy sauce this week, please factor that in when you're jumping to conclusions about what the scale is showing. But generally, for most of us, 1 week, the average week is going to be enough time if we're being consistent to actually test if that strategy works. And if you're losing like a pound or two a week, even a little bit more, fantastic. Like, that is direct feedback that you don't need to change anything and you've got a winning formula. That's not to say you should religiously stick to that precise formula and not be open to change in time. But generally speaking, you can take that into the next week, like, okay, I just need to do something similar because this is working for me right now. Whereas again, if you're like adding nuts and then taking nuts out of your diet, if you're doing, oh, what about the whole bread thing? Like, if you're doing bread sometimes and not others, if you're doing intermittent fasting one day and then not the next day, like how, when you look at the scale, even if it's dropped, when you look at the scale at the end of the week, how the bloody hell do you know what's worked? I mean, we know what works for weight loss is being in a calorie deficit, but how do you know what is the best vehicle for you to be in a calorie deficit if you're constantly changing your mind about what you're doing? So pick a process, stick to that. If it's Slim and Sustain and you resonate with my stuff, like I say, join my program, get my content here, you're in the right place. But if I'm not your guy and you don't resonate with my particular approach, that's fine too, but you still need to pick one. Otherwise, you're never going to know what works. You're never going to have a framework to actually, you're never going to have a clear plan and structure to be accountable to direct your actions. It's going to be all fudge because it's very unclear in your mind. So you never actually pick any one thing and then stick to it for very long. Like, you need clarity, you need certainty, you need a path to walk forward. And people don't do that because they get overwhelmed because there's so many different arguments out there. Okay. I think I'm going to go in circles here. I'm sort of starting to say the same thing. So links below for more resources. Thanks, folks. Pick a process is my message. that frenetic diet hopping is going to ruin your weight loss results. In the short term, week to week, you might get some good progress now and again. You'll have these sprints, like these little bouts of crazy weight loss, but you'll just stay doing this thing that so many, sadly, of my clients do before they join Slim and Sustain, which is just decades and decades. And everyone says to me, "Oh, Ryan, I found you on YouTube like 3 years ago, but I only signed up now." And I'm like, "Why, man? Like, you've been doing this for decades. Let's just get this done. Let's pull the trigger now." Okay. All the best, folks. Enjoy your day. That's enough from me. Take care.